Hello everyone! Welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, we discuss historically haunted locations. And as of lately, some true crime and now a little bit of unsolved mysteries. So practically anything and everything that has to do with spooky history. If that's something you're interested in, be sure to hit that subscribe button and notification bell because I am here for you every Wednesday. If you missed last week, we talked about Deerpark CBS School and we reviewed the poltergeist videos to see if they were fact or faked. If that's something you're interested in, I'll be sure to link it up here for you. Can you guys believe that I've been doing this for 3.5 months? Time sure does fly when you're having fun. Let me know if you guys are enjoying these videos because I really do have fun making them. Other than ghosts and true crime, I do love a good unsolved mystery. And I wanted to find one that I thought would be really cool to talk about. So while I was doing my research, I came upon this story about the ghost ship Mary Celeste. Let me know if you've heard of it. I remember briefly hearing about it, I think in like school maybe, but I never really dived into the history and learned anything about it. So I'm excited to dive into this video. I'm really sorry about the weird angle. I really want to get a background instead of just my room, but I just don't know what to get yet. So hopefully my background will be changing. I switched it up because I got a camera and a tripod, and I was recently just sitting my camera on my vanity because that's where I get my lighting, because I have to usually make these videos at night because I do work full time. So I had to move my camera stand over a little bit and adjust everything. So that's why everything looks a little bit different, but hopefully we'll get the right background. Anyways, I'm gonna stop jabbing and let's get into the video. Now before we get into the unsolved mystery of the ship, the Mary Celeste, I want to talk a little bit about the history of the ship itself. They started building the ship in the late 1860s, and she would set sail on May 18th of 1861. She was first given the name the Amazon. This ship was 99.3 feet in length, 25.5 feet broad, with a depth of 11.7 feet, and weighed approximately 198 tons. She had a few different owners and was in an accident or two, but was always fixed up and deemed very seaworthy. After her second wreck, she was sold to a man named Richard W. Haynes, and he was from New York. Haynes paid $1,750 for the ship and spent $8,825 in restoring her, and then he would later rename her the Mary Celeste. Later, he would sadly lose the ship to his creditors and would be sold to a James H. Winchester. I wonder if he was related to Sarah Winchester. I actually tried looking him up, but I couldn't find anything about him, so who knows? Let me know if you know, because I really couldn't find it. On October 29th of 1872, two more investors would become owners of the ship, and one of them was Benjamin Spooner Briggs. After that, they would soon build onto the ship, which would increase her length to 103 feet, 25.7 feet broad, and a depth of 16.2 feet. They really did this to kind of add on a cabin because Captain Briggs liked to bring his family on the voyages with him. They wanted to have extra room for them to be on the ship with him comfortably. So now let's talk a little bit about Captain Briggs. He came from a family of experienced seamen, and him and his family were very respected in their community. He was known for his fairness and ability by those who worked under him, and he eventually worked his way to becoming a master mariner, so very impressive. He had a wife and 2 children. His wife's name was Sarah, and they had a son named Arthur Briggs, and he was 7, and a daughter named Sophia Briggs, and she was 2. Now, as I mentioned before, his family would travel with him often while he was out to sea, but in 1872, when they all were going to go on the Mary Celeste for a voyage, they had to leave their son Arthur home with relatives so that he didn't miss any school. So it was Captain Briggs, his wife Sarah, their daughter Sophia, and 8 crewmen. The plan was that on November 7th of 1872, the now 282-ton ship would sail from New York Harbor to Genoa, Italy. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. I'm probably mispronouncing it, just so you know. But unfortunately, things didn't really go as planned. On December 5th of 1872, the crew of the ship De Gratia was about 400 miles east of the Azores Islands and found the Mary Celeste. She was sort of in a disheveled condition, but still very seaworthy. It was under partial sail, and the one and only lifeboat that was on the ship was missing. Now, Captain David Morehouse was the captain of the De Gratia ship, and he was kind of shocked to see the Mary Celeste because the Mary Celeste left New York 8 days before Captain Morehouse's ship did. So it should have already arrived in Genoa, Italy. I think being partially Italian, I'd be able to pronounce Italian names naturally. Anyway, he decided to go and check up on the ship and make sure everyone was okay. So he ended up sending their small boat with a few crewmen to go and board onto the Mary Celeste. When they got there, they noticed that below decks, the ship's charts had been tossed around and the crewmen's belongings were still in their quarters. The one lifeboat was missing, like we talked about earlier, and one of the 2 pumps was disassembled. And they also discovered that there was about 3.5 feet of water in the ship's bottom. And what they thought was odd was that the 1,701 barrels of industrial alcohol was still intact and on the ship, as well as 6 months worth of food and water. So Captain Morehouse did think this was odd, but he didn't want to leave the ship there. So he decided to tow the ship 800 miles to Gibraltar for a salvage hearing. Now, if you know nothing about ships and all that, like myself, then you have no idea what a salvage hearing is. So I looked it up. And a salvage hearing is a determination of whether the salvagers, this would be the De Gratia crewmen in this case, would be entitled payment from the ship's insurers. So they wanted to claim the insurance money on the ship because they found the ship and no owner. No captain, no nobody. So they wanted to claim the insurance money. So now let's get into the theories of what people believe happened. Let me tell you, there are a lot of crazy theories out there. A lot, okay? But I figured I'd go over a few and see what you guys thought. Now, some of the way out there theories have to do with sea monsters and alien abductions. So there's that. But I'm gonna go into the more popular ones. And the first one is a crazed mutiny. Now, when the ship was first checked out by authorities, they saw these strange markings that kind of looked like they were caused by an axe, along with what they thought was traces of blood. Now, some people speculate that some of the crewmen got drunk off of the alcohol that was being hauled and massacred everyone on board, dumping their bodies off the ship and then taking the sole lifeboat. But there are problems with this theory. And for one, the alcohol on this ship was industrial, so it was not fit for drinking. Also, why would they take their chances in a small lifeboat when they had a whole ship they could take wherever they wanted? But later, after further inspection, they realized that the markings were just normal wear and tear, and what they thought was blood was not blood at all, but possibly like rust or stains. Now, the second theory has to do with a natural disaster. One possibility is that the Mary Celeste came upon a water spout, which is basically a tornado at sea, or maybe they came across a violent sea quake. But have you seen what water spouts look like? These things are terrifying. I'm already terrified of tornadoes. So if you mix water and tornado together, that ain't gonna be good. So what they speculate in this theory is that maybe they thought the ship was gonna sink, so they decided to hop into the lifeboat to seek out safety and hoping to survive. There's some problems with this theory as well. It seems very unlikely, for one. And for two, why would anyone in their right minds get into a very small lifeboat while there is a water spout and a sea quake running around somewhere? I mean, come on. Now, the third theory is an alcohol explosion. And this theory is related to their cargo, the industrial alcohol that they were hauling. They think that maybe the fumes of the alcohol had escaped, either causing a small explosion or making the crewmen think that an explosion was about to happen. Briggs could have given the order to temporarily abandon the ship and have the lifeboat attached to the ship by a rope until the danger had passed. And they think maybe the rope could have come undone and they were left stranded out at sea while their ship sailed itself. There's also a slight problem with this theory. It is very possible, but what they found out is that the barrels that they were hauling, there are two types of wood that the barrels were made of. One of them was more porous than the other, which means liquid would leak out faster. But the barrels that had the pores were empty. They didn't have the alcohol in them. So the barrels that did not have the pores weren't leaking at all. There was nothing wrong with them. They were sealed properly. And also there were no reports of fumes or signs of a small explosion when the ship was inspected. So even though this theory is very possible, it's really not likely. Now the fourth theory is about Captain Morehouse. They think that Captain Morehouse and his crew came upon the Mary Celeste and that it wasn't empty at all. They think that Captain Briggs, his family, and his 8 crewmen were forced to get onto that lifeboat so that Captain Morehouse can claim the insurance money. And this is exactly what Frederick Solly Flood suspected. Now, Frederick was the Attorney General in charge of the inquiry, and he suspected mischief. However, after 3 months, they couldn't find any signs of foul play, and they ended up paying the salvagers. But they only gave them 1/6 of the $46,000 that the ship was insured for. That tells me that they weren't fully convinced, but they just couldn't prove without a doubt that Morehouse and his crew were a part of the disappearances of the crewmen and the Briggs family. Now, there was an old movie about the Mary Celeste that was made in like 1935, and that's where they blame it on 2 German brothers, and their names were Volkert and Bowie Lorenzen. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing their names. I'm really not trying to. But there was no proof that they had anything to do with it. Plus, I think this was around the time Hitler and his Nazis were coming into power. And that could be why the people who created the story blamed it on the brothers. But I feel bad. According to their descendant, they were very respected in their community. They were newly married. They had money. So there was really no reason why they should be labeled as a suspect because there was no motive. I think what part of it on why they decided to blame the brothers was they realized that the brothers didn't really have belongings on the ship. And so they assumed that they just took their belongings and left. But in reality, they were on a ship before they got onto the Mary Celeste, and that ship crashed, and they ended up losing all of their personal items, so they really didn't have anything to bring with them on the Mary Celeste. They were on that boat so that they could get home, is what my understanding was. And plus, they disappeared along with the others. They didn't go back to their families. One of them had a kid on the way, and they didn't go back. You'd think they would, but who knows? So now let's get into the final theory of what the scientists and historians say that they believe had happened. What really confused them was that they couldn't figure out why such an experienced captain like Captain Briggs would order anyone to abandon ship that was still deemed seaworthy. There was plenty of food, the cargo was still on the boat, so that means there were no pirates. So what would be the rational reason on why Captain Briggs would order his crew to leave the ship? Now, they did review the transcriptions of the Mary Celeste log, where notations were made that stated the ship was 6 miles from and within sight of the Azores Islands of Santa Maria on the 25th of November. Then, with the testimony of the De Gratia crew about finding the ship 400 miles east of the island, they were able to work backwards and create a path between those 2 points. And they did this based on the wind speeds and directions at the time the ship was at sea. They believe that Captain Briggs did order his crew to abandon ship within sight of land. Then the ship just essentially sailed itself the hundreds of miles until it was found. But why leave a ship that's not sinking? Their conclusion was that Captain Briggs was actually 120 miles west of where he thought he was. And this was probably because of an inaccurate chronometer. Now, I know nothing about ships, so I had to look up what a chronometer was. And it is a timepiece that is carried on a ship and employed in the determinations of the ship's position by celestial navigation. So pretty interesting, I thought anyways. Now, apparently it was really common to have many of these on a ship, and that's really in case one was broken or just wasn't working properly. However, the Mary Celeste only had one of these on the ship. So what they figured is that by Captain Briggs's calculations, he should have sighted land 3 days earlier than he did. The day before he reached the Azores Islands, Briggs changed course and headed north of the Santa Maria Island, thinking he was seeking haven. Now, the night before the last entry in the ship's log, the Mary Celeste was facing rough seas and winds as high as 35 knots, which I looked it up and it was like 40 miles an hour. But still, even with a faulty chronometer and the winds, he wouldn't have ordered his crew to just abandon ship. What experts had found was that the previous voyage the Mary Celeste did had coal, and they believed that the construction debris could have messed with the ship's pumps, which would explain the disassembled pump we talked about earlier. And with the pump not working, Captain Briggs would not have known how much ship water was in the ship's hull, and it was too fully packed for him to measure it visually. So they believe that having come through some rough weather and having finally sighted land and no way of determining on whether the ship was taking on water, it's very possible he could have ordered to abandon ship to prevent disaster. They believe that the tiny lifeboat just couldn't hold up Captain Briggs, his wife, their daughter, and the 8 crewmen, and it ended up sinking, and they were left stranded out at sea, and they just never made it to land. Obviously, I don't think we'll ever know what really happened on the Mary Celeste, and whether it was Captain Morehouse just trying to collect insurance money, or if Captain Briggs really ordered everyone to get off the ship because of all the bad luck they were having, or who knows, maybe it really was sea monsters. But let me know what you guys thought of this story, and if you've heard of it, and what you guys think of unsolved mysteries. Like, what is your favorite unsolved mystery? Let me know in the comments. And as always, don't forget to subscribe if you're not already. You know the drill. That's it for me today. I will see you guys next week, and until then, I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye.